division camp.
Excellent, Snake. Age hasn't slowed you down one bit.
Kept you waiting, huh?
Can you believe it's been 10 years since Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes released? I remember like it was yesterday the way I used to obsessively watch the trailer for it over and over again. In fact, while making this video, I found a comment I made 10 years ago on the trailer for Ground Zeroes where I was seemingly hyped the game was coming out spring of 2014. You can also go to my tweets from that time if you need more proof that I was absolutely obsessed. I even went as far as calling every single mom and pop game shop in my area to find out if they received the game early and were willing to sell it to me. Eventually, I found one that did, and I was able to play the game about a week early. I got pretty good at Ground Zeroes, and for a while, I was #1 in the entire world on the PS4 leaderboards for the main mission on hard with reflex mode disabled. I even got a shout out on the Kojima station the old Kojima Productions used to host for being the first person to do a magazine knockout only run. That run still exists on this very channel to this very day if you want to check it out. I absolutely loved Ground Zeroes, and I look back on this time fondly, but back then, a lot of fans and reviewers saw it as a cash grab and slammed it for being so short. The game got so much hate, Kojima himself admitted in an interview that releasing Ground Zeroes on its own, early and separate from the Phantom Pain, probably wasn't his best idea. Another common complaint was the fact that every single mission in Ground Zeroes takes place on the same exact map, including the side ops, which we'll get into in just a little while. Despite these complaints, praise was given to the game for its graphics and gameplay and for how well it ushered Metal Gear into the modern era of gaming. Nowadays, I don't really see many Metal Gear fans talking about Ground Zeroes disparagingly. In fact, the game tends to get even more praise than the Phantom Pain does. And while I personally love the Phantom Pain, it's easy to see why Ground Zeroes is so beloved and even preferred over Phantom Pain by so many fans. Lore-wise, Ground Zeroes takes place pretty much directly after the events of Peace Walker, but it couldn't be more different from its predecessor. While its story beats are brief, another common complaint that carries over to the Phantom Pain as well, what story is there can get pretty dark. I remember this catching me off guard the first time I played through the main mission. The most brutal moments in my opinion can be heard on the various Chico cassette tapes you can find scattered throughout the main mission and side ops. Ground Zeroes is definitely much heavier and much more depressing than most of the other games in the Metal Gear series. Some fans even complain that some of the story elements and events that transpired during Ground Zeroes were a bit much. Still, heavy moments aside, the game is integral in paving the way for the bulk of the Metal Gear Solid 5 experience, which is obviously the Phantom Pain. It's the foundation story-wise, and it sets up what you can expect when it comes to gameplay. I also have to say, as a massive Peace Walker enjoyer, it's awesome seeing Big Boss in his Peace Walker sneaking suit, complete with his MSF and Fox patches in glorious HD. And that is just a small detail in a game that is gorgeous in every single way. Now, I'm not really one to care much for graphics or how many frames per second I can squeeze out of a game, but just take a look at how amazing this game looks even by today's standards. And I'm sure this video doesn't even come close to doing it justice due to YouTube's video compression. Keep in mind this is a 10-year-old game that also came out for the PS3 and Xbox 360. Despite the Fox engine being notoriously difficult to work with, there's no denying the talented people that worked at Kojima Productions during this time were able to create one of the best looking games I've seen to this day. The weather effects, environment, facial animations, sound design, the UI, UX, you name it, and this game has top of the line designs in that department. Aesthetically, there's no doubt in my mind that Ground Zeroes continues to be the blueprint for every future Kojima Productions game. Just take a look at how closely the iDroid resembles the map in Death Stranding. Stylistically, there aren't many points you can take away from Ground Zeroes in any regard, and I think that's a huge reason why no matter how far removed we are from its initial launch, the game will always look phenomenal. Every single time I play Ground Zeroes now, I can't help but get distracted and caught up in how good this game looks. It's almost enough to distract me from how fun it is to play.
This pirate crackdown's a go. Move!
sifting through your items, aiming and firing weapons, and performing various CQC techniques were all streamlined and damn near perfected in Ground Zeroes. These are all aspects of the classic Metal Gear games that newcomers to the series always struggle with due to the convoluted controller layouts of those older games. Combined with marking enemies and reflex mode, what you get is a game perfect for someone new to the series that's looking to dip their toes into stealth action gameplay for the first time. That isn't to say there aren't advanced tactics and tricks, however. You can challenge yourself by playing on hard difficulty without the ability to mark and with reflex mode turned off, which makes the game much more difficult and, in my opinion, more immersive and realistic. You also lose your primary weapon and have heavily restricted tranquilizer ammo on hard, so you'll have to learn how to take guards out without relying on your non-lethal pistol as much. This means mastering holdups, CQC slams, and using objects in the environment around you to your advantage. It's never been easier and more satisfying to pull off some of these moves. The act of playing Ground Zeroes is always a delight, and honestly, sometimes I actually prefer the more grounded and slower paced gameplay in Ground Zeroes over the Phantom Pain. While both play very similarly, there are some key differences, primarily in the speed at which Snake is able to run in each of these games, and also the differences between his dive ability. In Ground Zeroes, diving is much closer to the rolls from the classic Metal Gear games. They're meant to be used only in emergencies to try and reposition Snake. In the Phantom Pain, you can pretty much spam the dive without any real repercussion, and this becomes one of the main ways to traverse quickly while still laying low. Ground Zeroes also does not include a loadout feature, so whatever weapons you have or find on the map itself are the weapons you'll be using to carry out your mission. And while one of my favorite aspects of the Phantom Pain is the ability to use all sorts of crazy weapons and gadgets, sometimes it's nice to go back to the series' roots in a way and rely on the weapons you have when you start the mission or those you are able to scavenge from enemies. The gameplay loop is extremely addicting, especially when you're the type of player that likes to see how far you can push yourself and the game. Trying to rescue Chico and Paz without causing an alert kept me occupied for hours, and we haven't even gotten into the side op missions yet. Apart from the main mission, Ground Zeroes includes 6 side-op missions that are described as pseudo-historical recreations of events that might or might not have happened. These range from missions like Renegade Threat, which tasks you with hunting down 2 targets and either extracting with both of them or choosing a more permanent solution. Another side op involves helping a certain legendary video game creator escape unscathed from the Ground Zeroes black site as he's swarmed by enemies. All of these side ops have normal and hard versions you can complete with trials or mini objectives found within each mission. Hands down the most unique side ops, however, are Jamais Vu and Deja Vu. Jamais Vu has you playing as an ultra-fast Raiden tasked with seeking out and eliminating body doubles hiding amongst enemy guards, known as Snatchers. You'll have to use the marking feature to discover who is human and who is a body snatcher. This is an awesome nod to another game by Hideo Kojima, aptly called Snatcher, that released back in 1988 on the MSX2, Sega Saturn, and Sony PlayStation in Japan. If you're a completionist, you can also try your hand at the various trials found within Jamais Vu, which will have you marking every single enemy, eliminating all the crows found within the mission, and a sort of cheeky side objective, which involves using the light attachment on your primary weapon to erase the various non-canon or non-Hideo Kojima entries of the Metal Gear series. Keep in mind this was around the same time that whispers were starting to come out about the mistreatment of Kojima and Kojima Productions, so fans saw this as a statement being made by the original Koji Pro team at Konami during this time. However you choose to interpret that aspect of Jamais Vu, there's no denying it is one of the most fun and most unique side ops in this game. Seeing Raiden donning his armor from Revengeance and getting to run around the Ground Zeroes map at blazing speeds while hunting down body snatchers never gets old. My absolute favorite mission, though, has to be Deja Vu. In this mission, you must recreate some of the most iconic moments from the very first Metal Gear Solid. Seeing the helicopter on the helipad for the first time, picking up chaff grenades on that same helipad without being seen by the spotlights, and recreating Psycho Mantis' iconic blackout are just some of the things you'll be doing during this mission. To end this mission off, you'll take part in a quiz that tests your knowledge on all things Metal Gear Solid. The questions change depending on the difficulty, and they range from basic questions about the game to deep cuts that only the most hardcore fans would know. The entire mission and its objectives are a love letter to the series, and also a way to remember just how far things have come for the franchise. Obviously, the entire intention behind the Deja Vu side mission is to invoke nostalgia into fans that have been here since the very beginning. But when I think about it, Ground Zeroes is weirdly nostalgic to me in a way that's very similar to how I feel whenever I go back and play Metal Gear Solid 1. Watching the intro cutscene end and being given control of Snake with this huge map in front of you and the freedom to tackle the mission ahead however you would like to is so reminiscent to being handed control of Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid 1 after Mei Ling finishes explaining the Soliton radar to you. You are given multiple entry points to continue your mission, and the spotlights and first few guards ahead of you are your first real obstacles. Despite going on and on in this video about how Ground Zeroes helped establish what a modern day Metal Gear looks and plays like, I can't help but get a feeling very close to this feeling I got when I was a kid playing Metal Gear Solid for the first time. On this 10th anniversary for Ground Zeroes, I think it's important to remember just how special this game really is and how much its influence can still be seen even 10 years later. There's another game in the Metal Gear franchise celebrating a big anniversary at the end of this year. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater released in November of 2004, which means it is turning 20 this year, so hopefully that means we'll be seeing its remake this year as well. I made a video going over why remaking Metal Gear Solid 3 is the best option for Konami to pursue for the series. Go check that video out if you enjoyed this video. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you in the next one.